To your question, could we be at war with Iran? Yes, absolutely. You saw how haphazard all of this process is. Maybe they'll flip a coin next time. Maybe they'll invite in a few other reporters and find out.
So recently, Jeffrey Sachs went on Andrew Napolitano's podcast, Judging Freedom, to talk about the prospects for a war with Iran, because what we saw in this Yemen leak was that Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, was eager to point to Iran as, justification for doing this. And Trump said in his Truth Social post, essentially, that he was sending a warning sign to Iran. So let's watch this and let's react.
Does this group, the Houthis, pose any threat to the national security of the United States?
Well, no major threat. They do attack shipping lines in the Red Sea region. They are, by their declaration, aligned with the resistance in Palestine. And they've been attacking ships. Is this a major security threat to the United States? No, of course not.
And what is accomplished militarily?
The ostensible reason for the attack, I think, was said, if I heard correctly, and I am halfway around the world in China right now, but was to warn the Iranians. So this was another proxy of a proxy war. So it's a group in the White House deciding, let's bomb some people to send a message. This was not about fundamental U.S. national security.
Always at the behest of Israel, too, and at least J.D. Vance admitted that it was like 3% of U.S. shipping even goes through that region of the world. Mostly concerns European shipping, and no one wants to ask the question, why are U.S. naval vessels in that region of the world in the first place? It's because we're involved in a long-term proxy war against Yemen on behalf of the Saudis. And now it seems to be on behalf of Israel, because the Saudis have kind of stopped attacking Yemen, at least for the time being. So the U.S. doesn't belong there. And the Houthis, if you say that the Houthis pose a threat to the United States, I can't take anything else you have to say seriously. That's absolutely insane. These people do not have the military technology to conquer the United States. This is absolute lunacy.
And is there any military benefit to the United States by doing this? I assume none.
I think the key for me is very basic. We've discussed it repeatedly. The war in the Middle East will continue. It will spread. It's in Gaza. It's in the West Bank. It's in Lebanon. It's in Syria. It's in Yemen. It will spread as long as there is no resolution of the terrible injustice in Palestine.
Right.
The whole idea is that Israel illegally and unjustly and murderously occupies Palestinian land. It leads to resistance. In response to the resistance, Netanyahu declares war on basically the entire Middle East and most of the rest of the world these days, including, I should mention, American universities. So he's at war because anybody, any force, any group that opposes Israel's brutality in Palestine is then an object of the Israeli war machine. The sad part is we are the Israeli war machine. Israel runs the U.S. government, runs the White House, runs that group that was intercepted or caught in communication by the Atlantic magazine reporter. They're run by Israel. They're serving Israel. They're doing this for Israel. And that means that the United States is in war in places it shouldn't be in. No, we should not be in war in Yemen, for heaven's sake. We shouldn't be in war in Syria, in Libya, in Lebanon. we're in war in all of these places. We have a group, an amateur hour in the White House deciding where to bomb, but they're doing it for Israel's behest.
Yeah, I mean, Jeffrey Sachs just gave about a minute and 30-second expose on the dangers of the entangling alliance that is the U.S. relationship with Israel. And it's been that way since essentially 1948, where the U.S. essentially inherits by proxy all of the enemies of Israel, and it never does Americans a lick of good. I mean, a lot of conservatives understand why a centrally planned economy is not a good thing, but then they can't understand how a globally planned country is a bad thing. That's Israel. It was created via a UN resolution as a mass land redistribution project in 1948. And let's just say that started a lot of the animosities that we have today. So people will always want to go back to yesterday and say that Israel's justified on the basis to do whatever it wants in Gaza because of October 7th. And October 7th was barbarism, but Israel and Palestinian qualms go back far before that. And Jeffrey Sachs is absolutely right here. Non-interventionism is the only way.
For American interest or American security. It's absolutely amazing. They basically said so in the discussion. I think there's another thing I would say about all of this. We are, not only is it amateur hour, not only is it Israel hour nonstop, just everything for what the Israeli government wants. But it's as if we have essentially one person rule. Congress is upset about the security breach. Well, that's understandable, but they're not upset about the fact that the president declares war when that is a constitutional responsibility of Congress. They're not upset when the president sets our tax rates personally by decree, because tariffs are taxes, and the U.S. Constitution says that's the responsibility of the U.S. Congress, but Congress doesn't care. We have one person rule right now, whether it's war, whether it's the economy, and it's a bit of an amateur hour in addition to all of that.
Hard to deny that Congress has been incredibly deferential to the president when it comes to war powers and the exertion of war. Jeffrey Sachs is absolutely correct about that, and it's a bipartisan thing. The founders wisely decided to lodge the power to declare war within Congress because of how much it had been abused. Abused in the Roman Republic, the Roman Empire, the English monarchy. The English monarch had the power to declare war unilaterally. And that's why they decided to lodge what they refer to as the sword in the hands of the legislature. So it's not as simple as to say we have one person rule, I think, though. There is an oligarchy and a deep state that's still in control of immense amounts of U.S. policy. I mean, there's no doubt that the CIA propaganda machine wields immense influence over our foreign policy, as does the Israel lobby. But still, for the president to be able to just throw forces and military strikes around the world, Constitution be damned, is a horrific prospect.
I mean, according to the transcript of this conversation, a texting conversation, a texting thread that went on for a while that was leaked to or it wasn't leaked to him, he was inadvertently or intentionally, I don't know how, included in the link. The editor of the Atlantic, the Secretary of Defense said, "No one knows who the Houthis are. Don't worry about it. Just say Biden failed and Iran funded it." Well, this is not a strategy of the Secretary of Defense. This is a PR strategy, which is basically propaganda.
Our whole government.
It did sound like a high schoolish conversation at that point.
It was, and they were saying, should we bomb them? No, I vote yes, I vote no. It's like a locker room talk, like a bunch of kids getting together about war. No declaration of war, no explanation to the public whatsoever, no explanation to the public about the breach of security, but no explanation to the public more fundamentally about war. And Congress, again, dead, useless,
Yes. Well, not only
absolutely not interested in doing anything about their actual job.
you're
And you really saw Pete Hegseth's true colors in this, I think, because in his written text in these leaks, he seemed much more concerned about how to sell this to the American public than he did whether this was a good idea or not. So this was just horrible. I give JD Vance some props for at least tacitly standing up against this at first and saying, hey, I think this is a mistake. It's not really American first. So, but really, it seems like they wanted to drum up the propaganda to justify this even before it took place.
right. But not only is Congress dead, but portions of the executive branch, the leadership of which is very close to the people who participated in this texting group, that should be investigating this probably won't. I speak of the Department of Justice and the FBI, which have no semblance of independence any longer. Remember the young man from New England, from Cape Cod? We talked about this extensively, Jack Teixeira. He's sitting in a federal prison for 20 years for having disseminated in his chat group information far less vital, far less immediate, far less lethal than what was revealed by these people to the editor of The Atlantic. And when asked to explain how this happened, here's what the Secretary of Defense said, cut number 14.
Can you share how your information about war plans against the Houthis in Yemen was shared with a journalist in The Atlantic? And were those details classified?
You're talking about a deceitful and highly discredited so-called journalist who's made a profession of peddling hoaxes time and time again, to include the hoaxes of Russia, or the fine people on both sides hoax, or suckers and losers hoax. So this is the guy that peddles in garbage. This is what he does. I would love to comment on the Houthi campaign because of the skill and courage of our troops. I've monitored it very closely from the beginning. And you see, we've been managing 4 years of deferred maintenance under the Trump administration. Our troops, our sailors were getting shot at as targets. Our ships couldn't sail through. And when they did shoot back, it was purely defensively or at shacks in Yemen. President Trump said, no more. We will reestablish deterrence. We will open freedom of navigation, and we will ultimately decimate the Houthis, which is exactly what we're doing as we speak from the beginning, overwhelmingly.
Notice that Pete Hegseth didn't address really the question, the, divulgence of this conversation, not whether the campaign was successful, which Trump also responded in a similar way. I mean, it's a way to kind of deflect against what we're really getting at here, and that's, this information getting out into the public. Now, the U.S. federal government has no problem leaking information if it's dangerous to the warfare state, if it questions war. But when you actually leak information having to do with war, all they want to do is deflect and justify the campaign. He's absolutely right about Jeffrey Goldberg being a total hoaxer. He's a left-wing polemicist and a left-wing muckraker. But that has nothing to do with the seriousness of escalating a war and letting this information just get out.
According to Pepe Escobar, who came to us yesterday live from Sana, was destroy residential neighborhoods and kill civilians in Yemen, probably as a favor to Prime Minister Netanyahu.
I'm in Asia, meeting a lot of leaders. Basically, nobody can believe what's happening in the United States right now. Nobody can believe what passes for government, for process, for analysis, for description, for systemization. We're
Professor Sachs is on an island off the coast of China, and we're waiting for his There we go. We back, Jeff?
Yeah. Sorry about that.
No,
I was.
You were telling us how foreign leaders are finding it difficult to believe what's happening in the United States today. Not only the public policy of the government, but the procedure by which those policies are sought.
There is shock and amazement at the complete lack of order in every aspect of events. Yes, the Secretary of Defense may try to laugh things off. He may try to use whatever spin he wants on something very serious. But people outside are watching this who are very serious. And they've never seen anything like this.
Do you think that the United States of America is preparing, the Trump administration is preparing for war against Iran?
It very well may be. To my great dismay, they seem to have thrown everything in with Netanyahu yet again. This would not be unique to this administration. Our government is run by the Israeli government when it comes to policy in the Middle East, and it seems that nothing has changed. Everything that this group does and says is in response to Israel's dictates and demands. So at this point, nothing would surprise me. There was a glimmer, a moment when it seemed that Donald Trump was going to assert American foreign policy. That now really has been absent, at least for the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, remember when Trump boasted about, I think rightly so and deservedly so, constructing and building this ceasefire arrangement between Netanyahu and the Israeli government and Hamas on the eve of his election, before he was even sworn into office. So Trump would have had to rubber stamp violations of that ceasefire, which have happened. Israel has violated the ceasefire, and insiders that have talked about this have said that Netanyahu always, was going to violate the ceasefire at some time, and it was just accepted among his cabinet. But Sachs is right. Israel is the crown, or Iran is the crown jewel of Israel's desired regime change operations. It has been for a long time. Back before the Iraq War II happened, they were saying that they wanted Iran to be toppled even more than Iraq, and it turned out to be on that memo, if you Google clean break strategy, that Wesley Clark saw, that was a planned regime change operation of the U.S., as Iran was included in that list. The thing that gives me hope is that J.D. Vance kind of had some opposition against this Yemen plan, but J.D. Vance in the past has talked about the willingness to hit Iran hard at the Republican National Convention this year. So we'll have to see, I guess.
Israel brazenly blew off an agreed ceasefire, started mass murder again in Gaza, started mass murder in Syria. The U.S. Has started killing civilians in Yemen, clearly at Israel's behest, to throw warnings to Iran. What was an opening, a repeated opening by the Iranians for negotiations, was met by brazenness by this group in the last couple of weeks, and the Iranians said, "Well, okay, there can't be negotiations then." It's alarming, absolutely alarming. The United States does not run its foreign policy in the Middle East, and we are now. I put it at 29 years of continuous war, caused by the mayhem of the Israeli leadership of Mr. Netanyahu, who's the world's worst and most dangerous politician. And this is what we continue to have now, day by day. So the answer to your question, could we be at war with Iran? Yes, absolutely. You saw how haphazard all of this process is. Maybe they'll flip a coin next time. Maybe they'll invite in a few other reporters and find out. In the meantime, they're, destroying our universities also exactly on the same orders coming from Israel. It's really amazing.
It's really hard to deny how much influence the Israel lobby has over U.S. foreign policy and Netanyahu, regardless of administration. You'd think that there'd be kind of an alternative to this, a non-interventionist alternative to the policy that the U.S. has embarked upon in Israel for many decades, but there really isn't. The left and right are in lockstep of it, and both sides try to one-up each other about who is more fiercely dedicated to Israel and Israel's desired foreign policies. Well, if you're going to preach America first, it's against entangling alliances, including the one in the Middle East. And I pray this does not come to a full-fledged war with Iran. It's the last thing we need, and really it's against Trump's interest. If you're a Trump fanatic, you will not want another long-term Afghanistan and Ukraine to sink the momentum that he has built. And he is, hovering around 50% approval ratings right now. I've seen it as far as like 54. And that's pretty good in terms of modern approval ratings. It's not like insurmountable. He could come down from that potentially. And a war or an economic collapse is, in my estimation, about the only thing that can do it. So I'm hoping that this doesn't get out of control and kind of escalate into a greater regional war or a U.S. regime change operation in Iran. Pray for peace, but speak the truth. That's what I try to do. So I want to hear from you guys, though. Do you think that there will be a U.S. military operation in Iran soon? Let me know in the comments below. And please like this video, subscribe to the channel. And what we like to say here is no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out. I'll see you guys in the next one.